Week three of our huge family conversations in our marriage and family kind of podcast. I'm Last week we kind of left off. We had talked about some parenting theories, and you'd gone into some great. You'd given us some great ideas to start thinking about mom. And this week looks like we're gonna kind of continue off of that, not necessarily theory itself, but add some vision to what it is that you had kind of described and yeah, I'm excited to hear kind of some of the things that you've prepared and your thoughts. But with that, I'll just kind of let you start and take us somewhere.
Hey, jump in when you want to say something or have a question. I am by
Absolutely.
no means an expert, so I like to make sure that this is just my experience and people understand that they can have a different opinion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, for me, I don't have all of those, long yards and hours and minutes of the day where I'm immersed in raising children or things like that anymore. So I have a lot of time to kind of look around me and see things as we've discussed. And one of the things that I've noticed, and I heard it coined on a podcast that I listened to, but just kind of this cultural drift that everyone's in. And it's, got political tones, it's got religious tones, it's got anti-religious tones, it's got all of these things. And for me, when I think of religion, I think just because you don't subscribe to a religion doesn't mean that you don't have ide- um, ideologies that have religious undertones. Like I believe a lot of the leftist liberalism ideologies right now have kind of a religious flavor to them. It's partly when I look out and see how they're kind of protesting and stuff, that looks almost like a religious revival, right? Like it has these people who are in charge and it's organized and like to the point they have snacks and like individual meetings and it's quite an interesting idea to look at and see how it's become religious in nature for a lot of people. And at the same time, how religion is becoming kind of disorganized. Um, and so it always, again, my lens always comes back to the family. Like, how are these things going to impact our families? How do they impact me as I am a matriarch of family? Also, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a wife. And so those things I'm always looking at how I can influence. I teach a lot of women unintentionally. And so I know that I have influence beyond what I realized. So as we talk about this cultural drift and understanding kind of what this phenomena starts to look at and what we see as far as drift and how to address it or correct it in our own lives. So this idea of vision plays out a lot, not just religiously, but in family science. How do we look at things, right? We talked last week about metacognitive things. And then now, instead of how we look at it, it's how we see it. And you and I are going to look at a picture and we're going to see most of the same things, but you're going to pick out different things. And that's why I know you know just enough, but I love art because of that. Um, I love, there's this picture of the savior playing chess, and I can't, the art isn't coming to mind, but one of the things that's very nuanced about it is you don't realize, like everyone thinks that it's a checkmate against the savior. It's actually, he has one more move, and that makes him win the game. And that's where we feel like we're kind of in the final times that we live in today. Like this, we're waiting for its final move because we all feel like we're a little bit in checkmate with Satan right now. So looking at art or the world that we live in. And then I want to come back to this family lens that we use, which is called symbolic interactionism. And if you were to think of something symbolic in your life, like just it's a question, what would you say are things in your life that you would consider just generally symbolic to see?
Sorry, can you repeat it? It sounded like it cut
Like
out there for a
like
second.
in your life, what is something you would look at that has symbolism to it?
Um, Symbolism. I guess just in general, you're saying?
Anything,
Um,
literally anything. Like Target has a symbol. What does that mean? You're going to go shopping.
right.
You would say the temple has meaning. That's
Sure.
a religious symbol. But there are other symbols. What does a belt symbolize?
Your pants don't fit. I don't know.
Right, right. I mean, there's, or you wear something stylish, right? Like a
Right.
watch. Like everything has symbolic meaning to it. And we forget that. And so we go through our life and we get really numb to a lot of the symbolism in our life around us. And that's very, very unfortunate because it's permeating us. And so it's really important what pictures you have around you. Like when you guys were growing up, right? I for sure propagandized you guys around the mirrors at home. Or I would have quotes from the prophets and apostles and general authorities or scriptures or from the Savior because I was 100% propagandizing you. And that's because I definitely knew that you were being influenced by things outside of our home that
Right.
had value. Other symbolic things like rituals that we engage in. For example, Santa Claus coming, that's a ritual. We just don't consider it a ritual. Or the
Yeah.
Easter Bunny coming, things like that. Those are all ritualistic things that happen. We get ready together, we go to church together, we come home, we have dinner. That's ritualistic. And so families should pay very, very close attention as they're looking at the vision of their home, what the rituals are that they're engaged in. So you and your wife, for example, you sit down. Well, let me just ask you the question. If you could map out a day of your future family, what would be some of the things you would include that would have value?
I mean, stuff that I think mm, most people within our religion, our culture do, of course, family prayer, hopefully scripture study, if schedules are make that possible, which I think is more about what you make possible than about, necessarily what you make time for. So scripture study, prayer, probably family dinners most nights. Um, going to, I don't know, maybe not on a regular basis, but trying to go see grandma and grandpa's on the weekends and different things that, I guess valuable time together and in those beginnings, especially beginning and ends of the day, making sure that we have those kind of touch points and whatnot. And most of it, I would say, revolves around religious something because those are the values norm that we get that we're trying to instill into our kids, right? And fortify for
Right,
ourselves too.
for sure. And like you said, kind of bookends, right? We often look at our days as bookends, like beginning and start. And so then you talk to like a mom who's got a newborn, and there is no starter into her day,
Right.
right? It's just all one continual thing. And you've seen that in your sisters-in-law in the last little bit, right? They just kind of groundhog day every day. And so, you're going to start to see, you're going to have a child who, when it's time to mow the lawn, and you're going to start to see how ritualistic you are. Because your little one's going to be like, get on my boots. And now we march and follow daddy out to the shed. And we get this, right, dad? And we do this, right, dad? And we go like this, right? And he wants or she wants to help you. And they're very ritualistic. They pick up on it like that because you, whether you realize it or not, are engaged in a ritual. It's time to go. What do we do? Let's go brush our teeth, brush our hair, get our coat, get our shoes, get the baby car seat, right? There are all sorts of rituals in your life that you don't even realize what they are. And so rituals play a big part into the vision of our family for big reasons and for small reasons, because you're going to start to see rituals. The importance of a ritual leaving the house is huge. It can be absolute chaos or it can be the smoothest thing you've ever had. And you're going to have a lot of both.
Right.
As you get really wise to paying attention to your rituals, you're going to find more peace in your life as you like consider that it's literally a ritual. So for me, I was like, okay, guys, we're going to go in 10 minutes. So, right, whatever you're doing, you need to start switching your brain. Okay, we got 5 minutes. 5 minutes meant time to start thinking about getting off the couch or whatever. Got
Right.
2 minutes, shoes on, right? All right, 1 minute left. Everyone out to the car. right? And so there are these ways that we can structure our life with our children to make rituals very, very meaningful and very, very stress-free. Or they can be absolute chaos and they
Yeah.
create a lot of conflict and difficulty and emotional dysregulation in a home. And it's going to be like that sometimes. But as parents, you have an opportunity to do that. So we subscribe to these ideas of having peace and order and all of that. And then in practicality, it's absolutely not that. And so you have to pay attention to those kinds of things when you're looking at what are the rituals. So it's great to have these bookends of days, but we can, shrink it down even more. We can get it
Right.
even more granular. Um, you're going to make lots of mistakes. There's lots of learning curves. Um, and so again, we come back to this cultural drift and you look around yourself and you watch people do things and it's easy to be critical, but ultimately at the end of the day, what are you trying to you have to ask yourself, what are you trying to emphasize to your children? And we like to say things like love. We like to love. We want our children to feel loved. Those are really important things. But I, for me, I want my kids to be really competent and um, know how to make a contribution in the world. I want them to understand who they are. I want them to understand their strength and their power, right? And so as parents, that's why you have to look at what vision is. And so in Proverbs 29:18, it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And then just kind of that interpretation is, without vision, families drift. And you
Right.
start to get really caught up in things that don't matter that much. You get caught up in this pregame show and it's try to leave the house. You get caught up in this, oh, do we play on Sundays, right? You get caught up in all these things because there's really no vision. And so as the children start to drift, as they start to feel like the parents aren't in charge, they will find belonging somewhere else. That's just how it is because they're looking for you to framework their life. And we talked about that last week. So, culture. You and I talked about culture this week, and I kept having this strong, coming to my mind. What does culture look like? Well, families follow the energy of their leaders. So you can look at a family and see if they have really great leaders as parents. You can just feel it. And that means they have a unified vision and their system is able to have balance. So when there's a lot of chaos, you have one parent who's trying to bring things down, right? Like we like to, I mean, the easy excuse is like, okay, you have a mom who's pregnant and she has a toddler. Well, then the dad is going to be constantly bringing things back into a balanced state. And he has to do that, which means there has to be a nice ritual when he comes home from work. And there's a nice ritual to go to bed. And there's lots of nice things that are symbolic in the child's home to keep them understanding the parents are in charge. Because the mom doesn't feel good, or maybe she's got a newborn, or she's got to go to work. All those things happen. And so the parents really have to have some united, shared vision. And that really helps the kids feel safe and down. And then that lends itself into the attachment view. So when the parents are united and predictable, the kids have predictability and purpose. They understand they're a child. They're not in charge of anything unless it's responsibility that you've asked them to do. Okay, it's cleanup time, and we clean up together. And it's bedtime, so now we go to bed together, right? And you figure kind of all of that out, and that becomes a situation where children feel safe. They feel like they belong. They feel like they're cared for. There's not a lot of chaos in their life. They're able to go out into the world that they live in and interact in a very pleasant way so people like them. And people liking them, Jordan Peterson says, one of my favorite quotes, he says, don't let your kids do things that make you not like them, because then other people will really not like them.
Hmm.
And that's an interesting mindset because you're like, well, that's kind of harsh. Nah, if your kid is whining and you're constantly like, knock it off, well, what's he going to do when he comes to my house?
Right.
And I'm not his dad. Right. And so either then I start telling him not to come over, especially a friend's house, right? Like I'm his
Right.
grandma. But like You just, and you know what I'm talking about because you know people who have kids who are like that.
Absolutely.
And that becomes annoying. And so the concept is parents have a shared vision. Um, Everything inside our walls defines who we are. And so we can go outside of our walls and not have to get the different definition from this cultural drift that's happening. Everything comes from inside our home. And so we define for our children what symbols mean. We define Target. Yeah, Target's a place we go shop. Target is not an ideology that we subscribe to because we support their transgender rights.
Right.
It's just a place we go get diapers. That's it. We don't have to get into the mixy of all those things.
Can I ask
Go ahead.
something? If you're done with that thought. If
No,
not,
please.
we're talking about this, and this might kind of be a little bit of not exactly on the point of what you're talking about, but creating this culture and such. I at least see this a lot, and I would say that even Parker and I struggled with this a lot in the beginning. Is that I think I often felt that in trying to negotiate a lot of this structure in our family, we not only butt heads, but it caused a lot of conflict and it caused a lot of arguments and even days and weeks of being upset with your spouse because it's hard to do, I would say is one thing, and you're trying to kind of figure out a new way of being because I'm like you and dad, but she's like her parents, and we're trying to figure out what the best thing to do is. But and I guess the question I'm trying to ask is when you're trying to negotiate these things, one, the assumption is it's not bad to argue with your spouse. That's not a bad thing. But
We can
then what
disagree.
what perspective would you give somebody who is going through those hard, trying to negotiate these things, and it feels like it's a war half the time, but it's a necessary war in a sense, but you don't it's contrary to what we have been taught, if you will, of conflict is bad but yet
Sure.
also necessary. What would your perspective about that be? Because that is the how you then, my assumption based on what you're saying, you create those structures and rituals, those habits for your kids, but you might feel like it's not something you're able to do because of the nature of conflict.
Sure. So let me know if I don't answer your question
Yeah,
the way that makes sense. So 100% people are going to just disagree. And I would lean into that disagreement just like you would at work, right? And so I look at parents more under the mindset of strategic leadership. And so in strategic leadership, there's no 100% agreement between the people. Thankfully, there's only two, which can make it better or worse, right? So if you get 10 people, well, good luck
right,
trying to get some agreement. But it's you and this other person. And for the most part, you would say you agree on 95% of the things that you want your family to do. Like maybe you want your kids in more sports than she does, and she wants her kids to take music and you don't care about that. Let's say that's the example. So in a family, the energy of the family follows the leadership of the parents. So if it's positive and creative and constructive and cohesive and open, we want open systems for families, then everyone's succeeding. If the energy is negative and it's enmeshed and it's dysregulated and it's chaotic, then no one's succeeding. And so the parents being unified is the most important thing. So dad and I had a different idea of like doing family home evening. And I liked it every week. And he was more like, okay, once a month or whatever. And so we kind of and we would disagree about this. And it was hard because he had a different way that he wanted to teach and I had a different way I wanted to teach. But our goals were right. They were good, right? They were principled. And so there were times that I had to let him do it his way. And there were times he had to let me do it my way. And that was okay because at least it was getting done,
right.
you know? And then what you tend to find out is the problems of why you're not liking what the other person is doing isn't really about the thing. It's more about you, right? And an underlying thing. And so if we can take a problem like family night and make that the problem instead of what's going on between us, that's a better solution. Because you being against each other, that's not going to work. But how to solve family night, that's the problem. And then let's be real. Ultimately, the thing that's underneath is your pride.
Right.
So you got to figure that out, right? And that's bleeding into everything in your life. That's what I think about. At least that's how my life is, right?
Yeah.
The things that I'm stubborn about, they're not just affecting my marriage, they're affecting everything in my life.
So when you
So,
say like unity in marriage, because that, I mean, what you're kind of really referring to is the good of ourselves being married, a married couple, but also the good of our kids and the values we're instilling into them, and then how that's being perceived in a sense out into the world. But the unity being we might be disunified or ununified or whatever the word is in terms of the exact implementation of a particular instance or thing we want to do in our family. We're unified more in the overarching, we're trying to teach our kids good values, and how we do that might look a little bit different, and we have to negotiate those things. But the unity is, right, we're just trying to do the best we can with what we've got. And if I
well,
go ahead,
and the win isn't about getting your way. The
right.
win is about the harmony and love and peace, PACE, between the married couple.
And
Not
when it's
even,
yeah, no, when it's not, when, for example, someone who is not unified in that, because that's often what I see. I see people my age and whatnot that are still negotiating a lot of these. I would say even people 20, 30 years older than me still haven't figured a lot of these things out and maybe never will. But the ones that want to, when you're like, okay, my spouse might not we're not unified. We have different values. Maybe there's a lot of people, I have friends that they want to go to church, but their spouse doesn't want to go to church, right? They want to go see their family more often, but their spouse doesn't want to go see their family more often. And I would say, I mean, everybody has to negotiate some higher level thing, right? It's not as simple as always, right? Sports or family home evening or those types of things. Sometimes it's more important or significant than that. How would someone start to, or even try to negotiate, consider, work with maybe those difficulties? Because creating, if you want to have a family home evening, but you don't even, aren't even wanting to go to church, the rituals that you're giving to those kids are going to look very different than
yes.
someone who is unified in that sense, right? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, if there is, like, in an instance where I have strong opinions about something, okay, and the other person doesn't care, then until a decision is made, I am going to take action.
Mm,
That's more how I move. So, like, I care about curfew, let's
yeah,
say. Dad doesn't care about curfew. Well, then I'm going to ask him to support me on this curfew thing, right? And we're going to work on it because there's no really reason not to.
right,
But sometimes the principle of the matter comes into play, church, not church, right? And so sometimes you're negotiating something like, okay, I understand you don't want to participate fully in the church anymore. Would you be willing to come to sacrament with me and the kids? Would you be willing to come once or twice a month? But it becomes a big issue, for example, when someone's like, okay, I'm leaving the church and I'm going boating every Sunday and I'm taking the kids and I'm gonna just invite them, and if they want to come, you got bigger problems at that point.
right.
At that point, you have to decide if you can tolerate that level of deconstruction of previous commitments, all covenants.
Sure.
And so, right, you got to get on the same page, so to speak. Like the things that I'm talking about, most parents, at least to my own children and grandchildren, I'm hoping they're on the same page already,
Right, right. Yes.
right? And so, again, strategic leadership comes from people who have common goals, common vision, common understanding. Everybody's got different strengths, and that is a bonus. That is the one thing I think diversity really is great for, is that You're really good at getting this type of thing done, and I'm really good at this thing, right? Like I can outwork anyone, but I struggle sometimes to finish, like get all the way done.
Right.
And so if you are partnered with someone like that, that's magical because then your strengths magnify you, right? And so that's why to your point, like when we're talking about the importance of children, if you and your spouse don't have unity, it doesn't create predictable behavior for the kids and it doesn't give them emotional safety. They can feel the disconnect. And you know that. There were times where dad and I didn't get along, as every parent and married couple has. And you can feel that. It's
Right.
palpable in the home. And that's why this important idea of creating culture and vision is so critical, even before and when your children are young. Because what are we going to do if the baby's sick on Sunday? Do we both stay home? Does one of us stay home? Does one of us take the kids? And maybe the question isn't something you decide right now, right? And that might evolve over the because I mean there are times where you're like, we just all need to lay in bed. We're all tired. We're exhausted,
Right.
right? And so, like, I'll give you a different example. For us, attachment looks very different right now. And so we've started this newer tradition of Sunday dinners, right? And I've
Right.
told all you guys, I'm cooking every week and I would love for you to come. And this Sunday dinner has become ritualistic to some degree. And it's sacred time for dad and I because we know that your time and your presence is precious and is a gift to us. And so even if we're tired or busy, we are willing to sacrifice to do the work if you will just show up.
Yeah.
And that's what attachment looks like for us now. It makes sure that you all know that we love you deeply and we love you intentionally and that you belong to us. You're always invited over to our place, right? And that simple act says to you that no matter what, we love you and you are part of who we are.
Right.
And that is how we make our attachment with you visible. And that's why attachment is so critical when you're talking about symbols and rituals, right? And so disagreeing about something small or big is important, but what's more important is how you live your life based on how you're conducting yourself. So, it's really if you and your wife are not able to agree on something like family home evening, okay, well, if you really want it and Parker really doesn't, well, is she okay with you just leading out on that? Or
Right.
and maybe she's like, it's just taking up too much time, right? We ended up switching it to Sunday nights
Right.
because there were so many conflicts, right? And you all knew Sunday night, and we bundled that. That's a nice little family systems word. Like we bundled a lot of things into it, calendar, food, like eating and scriptures and teaching and all of that. We
Right.
bundled all of those activities into that one. And so each phase of your life is going to bring something different, but you got to have a strategic leadership view. And so that means it's dynamic. You have to be ready to change it. So as your first kid starts to go through the ceiling to the next developmental level, unfortunately that pulls everyone else there. I mean, at one
Right.
point I had a teenager and I had like
A
a,
5-year-old or whatever.
yeah, very very different span of children, and that's just how it is, and you just make it work, and so that's why I think back to your question, there's going to be 100% things that we disagree about.
And
That's
and,
not the problem.
and
The
with the
thing the way that you decide to deal with it can be the problem, or solving the problem can be the problem.
yeah, because I guess that's kind of the point is when it people trying to negotiate those things, right? Because I think most people would admit that most things they fight with their spouse about isn't really probably the issue. It's more I think pride is what it is, but when it feels so tensious and so, I guess
Do you want
angry
to
or
win?
whatever you want to say. What would you say?
Right. You have to decide how much you want to win, right?
And,
And if you win, she loses.
and how, I guess, at what point do you, and we're, time's already flown by. We're already kind of there at the end, but when is it appropriate to stick in and say, no, this is something that's worthwhile and appropriate to not? Because you had mentioned the I don't care, and that's I think pretty obvious. Like I don't care how the towels are folded, so I should probably just fold them the way that Parker wants them folded because it doesn't matter, right? That's totally insignificant, but it can be applied to bigger things, right? If I don't care about curfew, I should probably just defer and say, well, yeah, why don't we just do it your way? And we can negotiate that as whatever. Kids get older and different things, but when is it appropriate to stick in and not? Because if it's so important for little kids, then that needs to be decided from the time that those rituals need to be implemented, which is, 1, 2, 3 years old,
Yeah.
however old, until they
Well,
start
it'll
following mom and
start
dad
day
around.
one. I mean, you're gonna start day one. Like, are you breastfeeding or bottle feeding? Right. And so those kinds of things start to get kind of built up. And, it was hard when my kids were little because they were strictly breastfed. And so it got to the point where it was just easier for me to take them with me wherever I went because they were my Velcro. Right. But had I had a bottle fed baby, that would have been different because dad could have kept the baby with him. And I don't even know how that would look, other than I know now that I've had daughters-in-law who I've been able to be like, yeah, go have fun. I'll keep the baby for a few hours.
Right.
Um, and again, that's kind of bittersweet. But when do you dig in? Um, I don't know that you do.
Hmm.
I think you've got to go back to core principles of what are we trying to do here and
Yeah.
how is this issue affecting our relationship? Because, like I said, if Parker wins, you lose. How does
Right.
that work for your relationship?
Right.
That becomes a wedge, right? And so, to your point, when you're like, it's not even about the thing we're fighting about. Yeah, it's about the thing that you were a big fat jerk 2 days ago.
Right. Right.
And the other thing 2 months ago that you said, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So again, but that's kind of a leave off for vision. A really great takeaway action point for vision. Schedule in housekeeping between a husband and a wife. That is part of how you have vision. Is you sit down, Jordan Peterson says 90 minutes a week. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too much. Um,
Housekeeping meaning not necessarily house chores, but you and your spouse getting on the same page, creating unity.
Not a date. It's not marital enhancement. It's none of that. It's that there's a 90-minute window scheduled in maybe 3 times a week, not 90-minute total.
Right. 33 times a week.
25, 15 here, right? And you got to be careful with it because sometimes it starts to feel like a dump,
Yeah.
right? And men tend to feel like women are dumping, and women end up feeling like he's not listening. And so you got to start. That would be a really great thing to practice right now, right? If you haven't already figured that out, but to sit down and go, okay, this is housekeeping time. Susie is driving me nuts because every time I say it's time to go, she throws a fit. So maybe Saturday or Sunday, we could work on kind of what that pregame show looks like when it's time to leave the house. And we could try that a few times, right? Like you could have 3 separate activities you schedule so she gets to practice how you get out the door. And dad's part of that.
Yeah.
And so you're collaborators. You have this strategic leadership vision.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, I don't know how to solve it, but let's try this. Let's try this. And then, the t-shirt needs to be made. When in doubt, call grandma.
Right.
Right? Okay, let's call our moms and see what they think. Get
Right.
out. Right. Just bring her to my house. She'll be fine. Um, so little things like that, right? You just kind of sit down and go, what are the things that are mostly causing disrupt and
Right.
upset and high emotional dysregulation, which I want to talk about next week, like emotional and emotional irregulation and dysregulation. And those are things that really affect the marital relationship too. And so you got to talk about that, right? For example, there's a period of time for women, for moms, when their sons transition from being little boys to being men. And that's a rough time, man, because dad's really got to step in right there. And you got to look at him and be like, you don't talk to my wife like that. At the same time, I'm doing the long yards all day long with him.
Right.
Right. And so that gets to be really, really dicey time for a mom and a son because he's my baby. And the way that he needs to be treated and talked to is going to be really different from a dad than from a mom.
Right.
And so that's a really important time.
Yeah.
Those are really great opportunities for the husband and the wife to sit down and be like, and her go, okay, but I don't know what to do. And him realizing, okay, she's still in protecting baby mode,
Right.
but her son is treating her bad,
Is now
but she
the
won't care.
right. Is now
Right.
the villain of the situation. Right.
And so weird, right? Weird
I'm
dynamic.
trying to
She loves him,
protect the evil that's now attacking me.
but
Yeah.
you're watching her ready to devour him at the same time.
Right.
It says, it says, but yet she's gonna throw punches with you if you get too aggressive. Like it's this really weird. It's this really weird time that happens. Same thing happens with dads and daughters, right? She goes from
Right.
being his little girl to being super sassy and mouthy, and that's where mom has to look at her and be like, "You don't talk to your dad like that." Well, right? It's better
Right.
from the mom right there to go, you don't talk to dad like that. I don't talk to dad like that. You don't talk to dad. So that's why, as a wife, you better be darn sure you're not mouthing off to your man like that.
Right.
Don't disrespect him, or
Yeah.
your daughter will. So don't do that.
Yeah.
And
I'm
so
no, go ahead, finish. Yeah.
all of these times are just really, so it'd be really great to get kind of in your system if you have 3 to 4 to 5 times a week, depending on how your system works, right? Your strategic leadership plan, where you guys sit down and you guys just kind of like fine tune all the little things that
Yeah.
need a little bit of, because really, families just go like this. And you have times where it's up and down, and then you have this little
Right.
thing that kind of goes to. And so you just want to be paying attention to all those. You want to keep your finger on those pulse of what's happening in the family and in your relationship and with each child from each parent and in the sibling dynamic. And that's what women manage. That's the emotional load most women carry. And so as a husband, that's your job. You come in and you support whatever that is. And you can point out to her, hey, I noticed this one's getting a little bit right? Especially like one, for example, dad would say, you're babying Luke too much. And I was like, he's my baby. He's like, yeah, but he's got to be a big boy. You can't baby him. And I'm like,
That's what I want to do. Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, yeah, but he's getting bugged because you're babying him too much. And I'm like, dads have to kind of come in and help figure that out.
Right.
So all these little things, strategic, but again, I didn't have a really great strategic leadership view. I
Yeah.
didn't have that. Now I understand it better. I understand it more retroactively. So that's why I'm hoping I can offer this up to my children and
Yeah.
grandchildren, having learned from my, you know, my school of hard knocks.
Experience. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a great place for us to lead off. I actually really like the housekeeping inventory kind of thing for spouses. I think that's a really good place to for people, well, for me and anyone else to start to implement and look at and really get unified with their spouse in a true sense, not just the way that I guess, as you said, the cultural drift of unity might not be what it is that we actually mean that to be. So I look forward to next week. You said next week is going to be kind of emotional
Yeah, yeah. And so a
disruption, something
clarifying
like that.
finishing sentence that I had was the mission of what we do doesn't change, but our methods might,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so it's okay to be adaptive. It's really important to be adaptive. So just keep that in mind because sometimes we let these fearful things kind of come up where we're like, okay, got to get it just right. No, you don't. You just got to be really adaptive.
Yeah. I
And
like that.
you guys have all the tools. I have complete faith in my children and in my in-laws, my children that have married in, that they are gonna just nail this. They
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
So I love
Thanks,
you guys.
Mom. That's great.
Okay.
Until next week.